want to say a couple things. One, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Immigrant Affairs Civil Rights and Equity Committee for February 1, 2021. This is the first hearing of the year. So I am Council Member Kevin DeLeon, Chair of the committee. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Madam Clerk, to call the roll in order to establish a quorum. So Madam Clerk, let's call the roll.
Yes, sir. Councilmember DeLeon as chair.
Here.
Councilmember Price.
Here.
Councilmember Farrell.
I am present.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Cedillo.
Present.
And Councilmember Rahman. Councilmember Rahman? Councilmember Rahman appears to be absent. We have 4 members, Mr. Chair, and a quorum. Thank you.
Yes, we've established a quorum. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. To each and every one of you, welcome, especially to Mr. Vice Chair, Councilmember Curran Price, Mr. O'Farrell, as well as Mr. Cedillo. Hopefully, Councilwoman Nithya Rahman will be joining us shortly. Once again, I want to thank those who are joining us this afternoon. I think all of us are distinctly aware that this is the first committee hearing under their newly sworn in Biden-Harris administration. It bears repeating that American voters overwhelmingly selected Joe Biden by more than 7 million votes, a direct signal that the majority of Americans demand change. And without question, this change was made possible by the large turnout of both African Americans as well as Latinos throughout the country. The repudiation of the previous administration cannot be ignored or discounted as we work to reconcile the nation. Nor can we dismiss the national division and violence we collectively experienced over the past 4 years, violence waged in the form of attacks on immigrants, on refugees, on asylum seekers, including children. Division manifested in violence against communities of color and diverse faith backgrounds, whether it be Black, Brown, Asian, whether it be Middle Eastern, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. Division that emerged in form of increased discrimination and hatred and violence against our LGBTQIA plus community. And while attacks against these groups were occurring, the bottom line is this: poverty and income inequality steadily rose. The national divide culminated during the pandemic with the politicization of prevention efforts to stop COVID from spreading throughout our cities and neighborhoods. Now, as we know, that division enabled COVID to spread and end nearly 450,000 lives and affect over 26 million people in our country alone, shamefully making us the #1 nation in the world for both infections as well as deaths. Now, in my role as Senate Pro Tem, I actively fought back on many of these attacks, specifically by authoring the first in the nation sanctuary state bill, brokering the driver's license bill, a measure that our very own Gil Cedillo worked on tirelessly over a course of 10 years for undocumented residents, and negotiated health care for undocumented children. But we can no longer work on these issues defensively. We now have the power to be proactive and solutions focused. The work of this committee is to combat these issues at the local level and work with our counterparts locally and at the state and federal levels. The Biden administration and leadership change in the U.S. Senate offers us an opportunity to change the course of policy and to begin enacting effective legislation on larger issues like comprehensive immigration reform. Now, I don't think I have to tell you that Los Angeles is home to the largest population of undocumented immigrants in the nation. And clearly, we deserve a seat at the table to discuss this reform. For our country to move forward as a unified nation, we are morally compelled to enact federal law that creates a pathway to citizenship for the estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. Now, according to a study conducted by the University of Southern California Dorrance Fee Center for the Study of Immigration Integration, LA County is home to approximately 1 million undocumented immigrants. To be precise, a little over 900,000 undocumented immigrants reside in Los Angeles alone. Now, of this number, an estimated 70% have lived here easily well over a decade. So they aren't strangers. There are friends, there are neighbors, there are loved ones who have lived in the shadows. Now, unfortunately, the federal government has neglected to fulfill its duty to create a path forward, even for those brought to this country as children and have grown up as contributing Americans. Now, when the federal government, and let me underscore this following, when the federal government processes people for legal residency, because oftentimes we hear about how no one should get ahead of the line and everyone should do their time and everyone should do it, quote unquote, the right way. Let me underscore the following. When the federal government processes people for residency, quite frankly, it makes the DMV or the Employment Development Department, EDD, look like a well-oiled machine. Now, a path to citizenship is necessary to solidify the bonds of family, a principle which is a cornerstone of every cohesive and moral society, but especially in America. And despite countless opportunities, the last significant immigration reform bill in the US was passed back in 1986 under then President Ronald Reagan, a Republican. Now that's over 35 years ago. What this indicates is that we have a broken immigration system that has been broken for years, if not decades. The immigration reform begins by dismantling the federal government's deportation machine and replacing it with a just and humane immigration enforcement system that recognizes the economic contributions of our immigrant community members and their essential place in our country. It also means broadening our safety net programs. And finally, it also means relying far less on detention to ensure immigrants actually show up for court hearings when they know that there are other less costly and effective methods that exist. Now, when I speak about this issue, I speak about this issue from a very deeply personal experience. Being born in downtown Los Angeles in the heart of my district to a single immigrant mother with a third grade education who worked her fingers to the bone as a housekeeper to raise her family. Now, she taught me the value of hard work and why it's so important to stand up for our community and do what's right for our community. Standing up for humane, comprehensive immigration policy isn't relegated to those of just first-generation immigrant backgrounds. It's our collective responsibility. In the same way, that's our collective responsibility to stand up against racism, sexism, homophobia, or transphobia. Now, I look forward to the discussion today from the diverse panel of local experts and advocates who are actually national advocates as well, too, who live here in LA about responsible, just, and humane immigration reform proposals that Los Angeles should push to have included in our federal immigration comprehensive package of bills. So I thank you very much for this opportunity to share a few words. At this time, I'd like to invite my colleagues on the committee to speak if they wish to do so. So why don't I call in our Vice Chair, Councilmember Curran Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just honored to serve with you in this capacity on this important subject. I had a chance to work with you, Senator Cedillo, up in Sacramento on these issues, and proud to be working with Mitch and Councilwoman Rahman here at the city. We know this is just a terribly important issue. And it doesn't matter whether individuals come from Mexico or Asia or Africa. You know, we've got to really value our immigrant community and the remarkable contribution that they make day in and day out. My parents were immigrants from the South and also instilled in me the importance of hard work, of scholarship, of community activism, community involvement, and serving those least able. And that certainly was my main inspiration for going into public service, and why I have continued to hold on to those principles and feelings as we move forward through a variety of challenges. And so I'm looking forward, Mr. Chairman, to working with you, my colleagues, and the community as we address these issues, as we raise the flag. You know, we certainly are very supportive of the Biden administration, but we need more than talk, especially from friends. And so I'm happy to work with all of us as we strive to create an atmosphere that's fair, honest, equitable, and one that we all can thrive in. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, I want to thank you very much for your comments. Your comments are spot on. And I also want to recognize and thank you for your steadfast work and commitment to the large immigrant community in your city council district, that be CD9. So thank you very much for all that you've done in terms of immigrant protection as well as naturalization citizenship. Next, I'd like to call a gentleman who actually needs no introduction. He's not just a local and state leader. I view him as a national leader. He has been at this for decades, moving the ball, speaking truth to power when it comes to defending the rights of those who have little or no rights, that being our immigrant community. Councilmember, State Senator Gil Cedillo. Do we have to Mr. Cedillo there?
Mr. Chair and President Pro Tem, thank you for that gracious introduction. First, let me say, first of all, thank you for your leadership. It gives me great confidence to know that you are leading this committee. That gives me great confidence in the future of this department with its leadership. I want to say hello to Felipe because I know you've been struggling with some health issues and that we are in a transition and a moment to seeing the end of this pandemic, but it's still a distance away, and so we have to remain ever vigilant. I see a lot of friends on the screen here, people we've worked with for years. I don't know, Juan Jose must have been 10 years old when we first started working on this, because it's been at least 45 years that we've been focused on this subject. And so let me just add this, that I think this committee of the most important city, the gateway to the West, the gateway to Asia, the new Alice Island of the country has a very critical role to play as we go forward on crafting the policy, because this is where the policy means most. There has been a change in administration, thankfully, alas, but much of that change was brought forward not just through the South, but also through California, Nevada, Arizona, the Latinos who played a major role in Georgia, the critical role, the winning role in many respects. Those efforts were very critical. I want to capture the spirit of President Biden. He said and has reflected that we were too modest in the crisis of 07, 08 with respect to the economy. I want to say the same thing, Angelica, that we cannot be too modest with respect to the crisis of immigration. Yeah, I remember the whole enchilada, 2002, 9/11. It's interesting. 9/11 was the date that we had scheduled to meet with Governor Davis to talk about the rollout of the driver's license. 9/11 was when there was a discussion of the whole enchilada of doing immigration reform. And since then, we have struggled. In the Obama administration, we only got one of the two pillars, and that was the enforcement, but we didn't get the reform. And so now is the time for us to embrace that spirit of the Biden administration and apply it to the question of immigration. We must be robust. 11 million people need to become citizens as soon as possible. Dreamers should just be an automatic. I mean, there's hardly anything to argue or think about. We have been embarrassed by kids in cages, and they should be reformed. We took a delegation of journalists to the border, and the stories were just horrific and an embarrassment to our country in the world in terms of how we deal with refugees and what is international law and what is our law. We were lawless in many respects in that area. And so there's so much to do. But the good news is I look at this screen and I see nothing but local experts who are national advocates. It's an all-star screen that I look at right now of people who have expertise, commitment, and capacity to help us guide the country. As Sir Weston used to say, the political winds come from the west to the east to guide our country in getting this right. Because, as you noted, Mr. Chairman, we don't know when we'll get another chance. And let's not make that problem we did, repeat the problem, the error we made in '08, thinking that we could only do one thing. That was healthcare, as important as it is. And we put on the back burner the question of immigration reform. I embrace your urgency. We don't know what will happen in 2 years, so let's not wait and find out. Let's go forward and get this matter resolved for the interests of the nation. And again, I say for the nation, I don't think immigration needs to be a partisan issue. There are farmers in the Midwest and the South who need immigrant workers. There is, in the urban areas, there's the service economy that relies on the immigrant workforce. And we've seen in the Silicon Valley, there's an intellectual community that depends upon immigrant leadership. And so we should move forward with all haste. And I'm just excited to follow your leadership on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Gil Cedillo. Thank you very much for your incredible leadership over the years, without a doubt. Next, I'm going to call on Councilmember Mitchell Farrell. Without question, he's been in the trenches always from day one, always advocating for the rights of our immigrant community. Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You really set the table beautifully with your remarks. I think you laid it all out for us right there with what you said, how Los Angeles has a privilege and a responsibility to set an example that the rest of the nation can follow. And so between the work that you did with Mr. Cedillo, and Mr. Price at the state level before ending up on the Los Angeles City Council has really shown the way. And Mr. Cedillo, I have to give you a special shout out for your driver's license law. It was so much more than just that. And we all knew that. We knew that that was a way for folks who did not have legal status to be able to actually just function and get to their work and get to their jobs and become mobile like the rest of us have the privilege of becoming. I come from a family on one side, third generation Irish American, and on the other side, Native American. And even that side of my family, we weren't in the continental United States. We were along the north shores of Huron, Lake Huron in Ontario, the Wyandots and the Iroquoian people. So we're all immigrants or migrants or third or fourth or 10th generation, one way or another. And even in my own neighborhood, I am surrounded by an immigrant and migrant community. Folks from Armenia, folks from Japan, the Philippines. Every neighborhood in Los Angeles is arguably one of original inhabitants, migrants, or immigrants. We really are the story of a nation of immigrants here in Los Angeles. And the fact, as you said, Mr. Chair, we have nearly 1 million undocumented immigrants in the county of Los Angeles, with probably close to the majority of that nearly 1 million within the city limits of Los Angeles. We give voice to all of those folks who have no voice. And that is a solemn responsibility that I am just so honored to be on this committee, to work with all of you, push these issues forward on behalf of these folks who need our help. And we can do that. So all of the work that we've done collectively over the years in terms of the work at the border on folks just waiting to get an asylum hearing, the children that have been separated from their parents. If we can help in that way, over 400 of them still have not been reunified with their parents. There's so much that we can do, and we can really be an outsized voice. And it's a wonderful time to be doing this work. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you on this committee. And I think it's just terrific. On the very first agenda item we have is to hear from the experts who are in the trenches. They're going to talk about the communities that they serve. And we'll be able to collaborate on issues of mutual importance. And that is why we're all here. We are on the same mission. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair and colleagues, Ms. Rahman, Mr. Cedillo and Mr. Price and Chairman De Leon. I look so forward to seeing what work we can accomplish together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farrell, and thank you very much for your always advocacy for our immigrant community. Last but not least, and Madam Clerk, please have the roll reflect the presence of Councilwoman Nithya Raman with us today. But
Will
last
do.
but not least, what makes I think our newly elected Councilwoman Nithya Raman very special is that she herself is an immigrant, and I think an illustration of the true American dream. Coming across the Atlantic Ocean, landing on the East Coast, Eastern Seaboard, coming to the Golden State, our state, California, becoming a councilwoman, and that living that real experience as an immigrant and immigrant parents coming over here. So, whether than that, Councilwoman Nithya Raman.
Hi, thank you so much for those kind words. Sorry, I was a minute late popping in. Had some technical issues. Just wanted to echo all of the great words that people shared already. I think there's incredible ambition embodied in the language that people shared today. And I'm really excited to be ambitious. One of the things that propelled me to even think about running for office, to get involved at the local level, was because I felt really helpless looking at what was happening at the national level over these last few years. But I think there's so much that can be done on this issue to not just protect immigrants, but to actually help everybody in Los Angeles thrive at the local level. And I'm really excited to use the full powers of the city and the full powers of this committee to think about what that agenda can be, that can be done right at the city level, that we can move on today, tomorrow, and get done quickly and effectively to really make a difference here in LA. And I'm really excited to be thinking about all of that with you, the other members of this committee, and with the incredible advocates who I think have made an agenda pretty clear for us going forward, and really working with them to shape policies that come out of Los Angeles that as many people already said, can be models for the rest of America. So again, grateful to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Raman. So in a moment, we'll proceed with public comment because this is a special meeting of the Immigrant Affairs, Civil Rights, and Equity Committee. We will not have general comment. So we're going to have the representative from the City Attorney's Office with us today to provide guidance to the public as they prepare the call on two specific items only today. So, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just instructions for today's public comment to the members of the public calling in. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and which of the two agenda items you would like to speak on. You'll have 1 minute to speak on one agenda item, or 2 minutes to speak on the two items. The staff will inform you when your time is up. You must speak on topic of the two agenda items. The goal is to get through as many speakers as possible. If you're not speaking on topic, or we cannot tell whether you're speaking on an agenda item, you will get a brief warning from either myself or the chair. And you will forfeit your time if you stay off topic. For the rest of the time, we'll move on to the next speaker. Please press *9 to request to speak. As soon as you hear someone address you on the phone, please press *6 and state your name and which agenda you would like to speak on. Thank you for cooperation. I believe the chair is determined to take up to 10 minutes of public comment today. That's his discretion.
That is correct, Mr. City Attorney. Thank you very much. Well, Madam Clerk, will you please read the instructions for the public to call in?
Yes, sir. The instructions are as follows. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-217-2990 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak. Please note, if you are listening to the meeting on a computer or speakerphone, you will need to turn down the volume on those devices before you speak. If you do not turn down the volume, there will be an echo. Again, once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak. That concludes the instructions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, staff. So we're ready to take public comments right now. May we have the first speaker, please?
All right. Will the caller with the phone number ending in 4024 please press star 6 to unmute yourself?
Bueno,
Caller, you are unmuted. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
bueno, ¿me puedes contestar bien?
Buenas tardes.
Hola.
Buenas tardes. ¿Necesita interpretación?
Muchas gracias para invitaciones, putos.
Regarding the mutual importance of 11 million immigrants, never in the history have I observed such hypocrisy in regards to those dreamers, those DACA children, and all the little kitties in the refugee camps that some foolish politicians neglect to remember only to abuse the contributing fundraising by their wishes to become an elected official at the administrative capacity. So where do you come off with this enchilada, mendigos? 9/11 wasn't an excuse. 9/11 is because people got tired of the United States. Because the United States abuses illegal immigrants, doesn't forward them with the idea that they can convert to the citizens as American citizen. As you know, I pledge allegiance, asshole, don't know shit. And in addition to that, I like the term third generation. Well, I'm a sixth-term generation Apache Indian, Mr. Faggot.
Mr. Herman, your time is
And
up.
I can tell you, I was born
Thank you very
in
much.
the United States.
Next caller, please.
Fuck you, assholes. Let me finish my part, you fucking refugee motherfucker.
Your time is up, sir. You're disrupting the meeting.
Let's go next caller.
Thank you. Will the caller with the phone number ending in 0370 please press star 6 to unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you very much.
You're now unmuted. Please state your name and the items on which you wish to speak.
I'd like to speak on item number one and two. Thank you very much. My name is Carlos Montes, here in Boyle Heights. I want to thank you all for convening this committee meeting. I was on mute. I couldn't hear all the beginning speeches. Just heard Gil Cedillo. Thank you very much. Excuse me. I'm glad I got in. What I want to also point out that I support the comments that Mr. Councilman Gil Cedillo made, and of course with the Biden administration. I also want to recommend that this committee look at, you're talking about civil rights, right? And we have a joke here in Boyle Heights that it's kind of tragic joke. It says, if you're a citizen, if you're Chicano, you'll get beat up and killed by the police. If you're Mexicano, you're undocumented, you'll get arrested and deported by the migra. So my point is that we got to look at the total picture. We're going to fight for legalization, citizenship, DACA, etc. But even if we have that, do we have equity? Do we have equality for our people? No, we don't. Many of the young Mexican Americans that live in Boyle Heights are abused, incarcerated, and killed by the LAPD and the sheriff on the east side. But I want to highlight Jessie Romero, a 14-year-old undocumented youth that came to Boyle Heights. He graduated from Second Street School. He graduated from Hollenbach Middle School. He was an awesome student in Mendez. 14 years old. He was killed by Evan Medina in the corner of Chavez and Bree Street when he raised his hands and kneeled down to surrender after being chased. Undocumented youth was the future of our community. That same year, earlier, and by the way, Evan Medina had killed Omar Gonzalez 2 weeks earlier, shot him in the back. I also want to talk about
10 seconds.
Jose Mendez, 16-year-old undocumented, was also shot in the back by LAPD.
Thank you very much, caller. Next caller, please.
Great. The Caller with the last four digits, 0441, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Great, you are on.
Yes.
State your name and the items on which you wish to speak.
Yes. This is Rabia Sen with Esperanza Community Housing, and I'm speaking to item number 1. By now, you've hopefully seen the letter sent by 112 organizations on January 20th, urging that you make the LA Justice Fund a permanent program of the city. The message is simple. Regardless of which administration is in power, the reality is that the dysfunctional immigration system in this country, which is founded on the basis of white supremacy, has been around for decades. We in LA can't afford to sit quietly while our immigrant communities still need your support. So we urge you as the city to act immediately. We need you to please make sure the LA Justice Fund becomes a permanent program, and that any such program ensures due process for all, no matter the individual's background or residency, and respecting the human rights and dignity of all immigrants regardless of contact with the criminal system. So we ask that in order to truly commit to universal representation, that the LA Justice Fund must not have any criminal carve-outs to truly allow for due process for all. This is an example of what the city of LA can and must do to rise up to the challenge set forth by our nation in this time of reckoning. The work for LA's immigrant community and for racial justice is unfinished, but with your leadership and commitment to the LA Justice Fund, this city can continue to be a leader in fighting back against xenophobia and racism and in furthering racial justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Next caller, please.
Thank you. Let's see. The caller with the last four digits being 1403. Please press star 6 to unmute. Great. You are now unmuted. Please state your name and the item from which you wish to speak.
Yes. All items and general comments.
Thank you, caller. You have no. We are not taking general comment this meeting.
But Mr. Cedillo promised. He promised me. I did lifetime general comments on every meeting.
Said we're not taking public comment, so please state the number of items and who to speak.
Yeah, make them stop this. All right. Yes.
It's not Gil's fault. The guy that can't say the Pledge of Allegiance is in charge now.
Oh, that's different. Yes, he's a dumb shit. Okay. Well, today we have these immigration problems. With 4 years of Trumpy Dumpy and Mitch McConnell, and of course, no reform is going to pass because of Republican pigs and also conservative Democrat pigs, and also because Biden is mentally insane.
Donald Trump was mentally insane.
Well, that's a very good point. So nothing's changed in the White House, yes. So we will support what Gil Cedillo supports. He wants green cards for DACA, and he wants green cards for TPS, and he wants all the other Jews deported immediately. So we support that. Yes, it's a very good thing.
Thank you, caller. Would the caller with the last four digits at 4208, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Rob Quan. I'd like to speak on items 1 and 2.
1 and 2, thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I want to confirm the account of the earlier comment that there was no audio for anybody listening in via phone until Councilmember De Leon finished his remarks and introduced Councilmember Cedillo. It's kind of weird that still having these technical problems, but bigger issue is I'm shocked to see the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Committee limiting public comment to 10 minutes, which is just barely above what council limits provide, or council rules provide. Really sad and says a lot. I also think it's interesting to see all of the glad handing when Councilmember Farrell, I remember 3 years ago, you didn't even show up for the vote on the LA Justice Fund. Last year, Councilmember Cedillo wasted the time and energy of advocates in trying to get the renewal, when it was really all just down to his lack of leadership. The committee rarely met, often lacked a quorum, so they couldn't even take official action. You know, hope to see better there. And on closing, it was great to hear from Carlos Montes. I think, you know, you should all remember that the only reason this committee still exists and Nury Martinez didn't kill it is because of the movement that came after George Floyd's murder and the enshrinement of the Civil and Human Rights Commission into permanent existence in the city. So remember that. Yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that may conclude, Madam Clerk. Is that the conclusion of our 10-minute frame? 10-minute frame?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We started at 2:29 and it's now 2:39.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I also want to very quickly, before we get to file item number 2, we have with us also the newly appointed executive director of the Los Angeles Department of Civil and Human Rights. That's no other than Capri Maddox. I want to welcome, Ms. Maddox to our meeting. And I think that if you can be a little tight, maybe you can say a few words with us, and then on the subsequent meeting that we have, for sure, we'll have it on an agenda item for a presentation of the work that you are doing right now with the city of LA. Ms. Maddox. We don't have Ms. Maddox right now. Okay, well, we'll move on right now. I also wanted to be very clear. I'd like the ITA also to make sure they can get to the bottom of the technical difficulties that we had. So that concludes, obviously, our public comment for today. We're going to go to file item number 2. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read the item into the record before we begin discussion and deliberations?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is a communication from the mayor regarding the appointment of Ms. Vicky Curry to the Commission on the Status of Women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Curry. Thank you very much for being here. Given you have appeared already before committee staff for review, we're very pleased and hopeful for the perspective and experience you'll be bringing to the commission. I'm not going to delay your approval of this committee. I just want to say, first and foremost, congratulations to you, Ms. Curry. I'm going to move that we approve your appointment to the Commission of the Status of Women. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second, Mr. Chair. Second, Mr. Chair.
We have a second.
Second.
Duly noted by Senator Gil Cedillo without objection. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Councilmember De Leon as chair.
Aye.
Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Councilmember Farrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Councilmember Rahman.
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote, Mr. Chair. The item passes.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Ms. Curry, congratulations. Felicidades. That is a slam dunk. That is a 5-0 unanimous vote on your appointment to the Commission of the Status of Women. So again, felicidades. Congratulations. Now I'm going to move to file item number 1. Clerk, will you please read the item?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 1 is a verbal presentation by various organizations and advocates relative to defining clear priorities with respect to immigration reform and the city's position on said priorities and related matters, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think before we proceed, you may want, I saw Ms. Maddox had returned. You may want to.
Has she returned? All right, that was it. Okay. Ms. Maddox, I see that you've returned. I quickly did a brief introduction because we're in a tight schedule right now. We want to have you in a subsequent meeting, but nonetheless, I wanted to present you to all the committee members today. And please take a minute, introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Kevin De Leon. I'm so grateful to see you and have you in this leadership role. As you mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Civil, Human Rights, and Equity Department, and we actually work very closely with the Office of Immigrant Affairs, and we actually look forward to working with the immigrant rights community as it relates to things that are happening in a timely manner. I wanted to quickly just thank Councilman Cedillo for helping us with an event that we had on Channel 35 just this week. to talk about the immigrant issues as it relates to the COVID crisis. So I'll yield the floor, but I look forward to hearing the comments and want to work with all the partners as we move forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ms. Maddox. We've known each other for a few decades now, and I'm really excited that you've come to the city of LA to bring your talents, your skills, your expertise, your passion to the issue of civil and human rights for Los Angeles. So there's going to be a lot of work, and we're looking forward to your presentation in the immediate future. Thank you so much.
And forgive me, I had to go upstairs. My pen ran out of ink, so I had to run upstairs and get a pen. But thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you. We will receive and file the verbal updates and then continue that at our next meeting with regards to file item number 2. In this special meeting, immigrant rights and organizing experts have been invited to participate to discuss a roadmap to and potential critical improvements to build, to strengthen, to implement federal immigration policy in a humane, just, and to Senator Cedillo's point, in a very timely manner, given the fact that I think we only have a 2-year window frame to get this done. The findings collected during this meeting will assist the committee and with developing a report and or resolution that we will submit to the state, to the Biden-Harris administration, as well to the Congress, but in particular to our California congressional delegation and our Los Angeles congressional delegation. Today we have representatives from the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Chirla, Asian American Advancing Justice, the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, United Services Workers West, USWW, Matthew 25, the Full Rights for Immigrants Coalition, and Cal State Los Angeles. So our first speaker will be no other than not just a local state leader, someone I've had the pleasure of working with on driver's license, sanctuary state, but indeed a national leader who's representing us and the California delegation in the Biden-Harris transition team on immigration policy. That is the executive director of Chirla, Angelica Salas. Angelica, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I want to thank the council members and the committee for hosting the special hearing. I would like to welcome our new committee chair, Council Member Kevin De Leon, our vice chair, Karen Price, and also to share my deep appreciation for our previous chair, Council Member Gil Cedillo. My name is Angelica Salas. I am the executive director of Chirla, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. We were founded in 1986, and Chirla is a statewide mass membership organization that seeks to have local, state, and national impact. As a result of our communities and our votes, we have a new president, and that president is Joe Biden, and the first woman of color to be the vice president, Kamala Harris. In addition to taking the White House, our communities turned out, and they voted to maintain the House and retake the U.S. Senate. As a result of the turnout and the promises during the campaign, immigration justice is a political mandate, and it takes the shape of big, bold immigration reform that must pass in the first 2 years. For decades, this country has been sending a one-word message to immigrants: no. Even as it accepts our labor, the nation says no to our families. Even as it accepts our ingenuity, the United States says no to our dignity. Even as it accepts our sacrifice, this government says no to our freedom. This election is giving us an opportunity to say yes. Yes to justice, yes to respect, and yes to permanent protection for immigrants. It is important to highlight that for the first time, we have an administration that has acted on day one to provide relief to a segment of immigrant communities and to send an immigration bill to Congress to take action. This is not by accident. It is a result of the labor of our movement, and we must seize upon it. So I agree with what has been said earlier. We have to take action immediately. So the first thing I wanted to do was actually to speak on some of those actions that were taken on by the Biden administration. So the first thing that happened was that we had the President-elect Biden signed an executive order to revoke the prior administration's order setting out an unlawful plan to exclude non-citizens from the census and apportionment of congressional representatives. This matters a lot because it really speaks to us counting as political actors in our communities and being seen as represented. What he also did, what the Biden Harris administration did, was reverse the Muslim ban. We got deferred enforcement departure for Liberian nationals. There was a stop on the border wall construction. DACA was renewed. And the DACA order by the president directs the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice to strengthen DACA, to make it stronger, to make it more accessible. And this will be an issue that will demand the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to prioritize. We are, I would say, hours away from the possibility of having Alejandro Mayorkas become the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the first immigrant to take that position. In terms of interior enforcement, the executive order on interior enforcement is seeking to reverse the Trump administration's draconian criminalization of immigrants by providing a moratorium on deportations for 100 days and directing the Department of Homeland Security to create a new priority structure where prosecutorial discretion is considered. Now, unfortunately, Texas has challenged the executive order, and the judge has issued a 14-day injunction until February 23rd. There are aspects of this enforcement moratorium that still are in effect. So it's important for us to note that our folks can still be protected from deportation, even in this moment, as this 14-day injunction is in effect. Now, the day one bill, the Biden immigration reform legislation, and some of the frameworks of what this bill puts forward. Number one, if this bill, as outlined, and we will have details just even in this week, even more details, it will allow the undocumented individuals to apply for temporary legal status with the ability to apply for green cards after 5 years. For DACA and TPS holders and immigrant farm workers, they would get more specific requirements that would make them eligible for green cards immediately under the legislation. After 3 years, all green card holders who pass additional background checks and demonstrate the knowledge of English and U.S. civics can apply to become citizens. Applicants must be physically present in the United States before January 1st, 2021. Lastly, the bill further recognizes America as a nation of immigrants by changing the word alien to non-citizen in our immigration law. Again, more details and specifics are going to be coming out in the coming week. But other pieces that I think are relevant and must be uplifted. The bill would remove the 3 and the 10-year bar. The bill reforms the family-based immigration system by clearing backlogs, recapturing unused visas, eliminating lengthy wait lines, and increasing per-country visa caps. The 3 and the 10-year bars are provisions that have kept so many families apart. And so the bill further supports families by being more explicit about including permanent partnerships and eliminating discrimination facing LGBTQ families. The bill includes the No Ban Act, and it provides resources for organizations who help immigrants adjust their status. The bill expands family case management programs and reduces immigration court backlogs, and it also makes changes on asylum and visas. The bill eliminates the 1-year deadline for filing asylum claims and provides funding to reduce asylum application backlogs. It also increases protections for U visas and T visas and for VAWA applicants, which are individuals who are victims of domestic violence. And it also captures more the unused U visas so that we can have more visas for individuals who are victims of crimes. So what is the process moving forward? And this, I think, is very important, and I'll conclude with this and some recommendations. Number one, there are various, we're in the middle of the fight. So the fight for immigration reform is happening right now. And it's important for us to note that because we have various legislative paths to move forward. One of those is reconciliation. So there are some bills that passed last session, for example, the Dream and Promise Act plus farm workers, they could actually bypass the markup and be voted by the full House if this is done by April 1st, more likely by March 25th. These bills passed in the last legislative session, so they can actually go right to the floor and be voted on before March 25th. We can also move legalization through the budget reconciliation. There will be 2 bites at this apple if, and I want to underscore, if Congress decides that it's willing to do so. So right now we're in the middle of the COVID relief discussion as part of budget reconciliation. And then the second time that we can use budget reconciliation is during the summer. What does that mean? What it means is that using reconciliation for immigration reform can only be used for legalization. It can't be done for the entire package or for a subset of individuals. This is because it must be clearly related to the budget. So green cards for immigrants are just that. You know, we have to talk about green cards for essential workers, dream and agricultural workers, and the 11 million. It can't take on the other subject issues that are part of a larger bill that I have described earlier. The other way, of course, is to pass something using regular order. Unless there is a filibuster reform, it will require 60 votes, and this bill will be the most expansive and hardest to pass. But we believe that there has been a seismic shift in the politics, and we have to push it forward. I wanted to say earlier, Councilmember Kevin De Leon spoke about the numbers of undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles. And I just want to tell you, we have more undocumented individuals in the city of LA, in the county of LA, than in the entire state of Florida, in the entire state of New York, in the entire state of Illinois. And I could go on and on. What we do in this city is going to protect certainly our fellow residents of Angelenos, but it's going to really we have to set a marker, and we have to really be clear that we have a lot at stake. So what am I asking you to do today? I'm asking you to use your voice for Los Angeles. We are the largest population, and we need to advance immigration reform, just and humane immigration reform, in order for LA to move forward. We have to support and maintain programs like the LA Justice Fund that allows for us to help our folks who are facing detention and deportation. We have to expand and provide affirmative aid. So when the moment comes for legalization, our city is ready for folks to come forward and become citizens of their country. And we need to ensure that undocumented individuals receive relief by the city and by the state and by the federal government. They have to be included and be seen as the residents and the contributors they are. Thank you so much for having me today, and I am open to answer any additional questions to the items that I have presented.
Thank you very much, Angelica, and I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions from the members, and we'll get to the Q&A when we get through our list of presenters today. But undoubtedly, the whole issue of reconciliation, the timeframes, and committee markup bills with the difference and contrast, and strategically what makes sense, and ultimately what is it actually going to get legalization for our folks, and what that process looks like. So I want to thank you very much for your incredible advocacy, and it is such a huge asset for us that you are on the transitional team for the president and vice president when it comes to immigration policy. Next, we have with us Zach Mohammed Baji. Zach, welcome.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Zach Mohammed, and I'm with the Black Alliance for Just Immigration as their LA organizer. And again, I want to thank you all for letting me speak on issues that pertain to Black migrants in Los Angeles in this nation. And as we look at today being February 1st, the first day of Black History Month, or as I like to call it, Black Features Month, I would like y'all to know that Baji envisions a world where people are free and liberated from oppression. That reality is only possible when our movement is intersectional. And as Baji says, immigration is a Black issue as well. For Black migrants, we are heavily burdened by crimmigration, the way our Blackness is policed, and being a migrant getting caught up in deportation pipeline. And as Biden administration put forth pause on deportation, we don't really call it a moratorium. We call it a pause for the next 100 days. Black migrants are excluded from such protections. Many of our people are being pretextually deported based on concerns such as COVID, with Title 8 enforcement action and Title 42 expulsion. Since Biden's inauguration, There have been and will be many Black migrants who are detainable and deported, and many of our communities are asking for deportations to stop. And then as we think around nationally, we have to think locally as well too. Los Angeles has the opportunity to help many Angelenos who are caught in crimmigration, who are in immigrant prisons, and being able to access due process and being able to access the necessary ways to stop their deportation, and asking for the extension of the LA Justice Fund, as Angelica, Rabia, and some other folks have talked about today, and asking for no criminal carve-outs. And especially as we know how Blackness and how Black and brown people are criminalized in the city, in this nation, we are asking for the way of universal representation for folks. And then with nearly 72,000 Black migrants living in the Los Angeles region, and 11,000 of those being undocumented and Black, Black migrants have been left out far too long when it comes to language justice. And as myself, someone who speaks Somali and a refugee from Somalia, I know my language and many languages spoken by Black migrants are not included for translation or interpretation services. We need culturally competent representation. And as we have demanded for extension and pathways for naturalization for those with DACA, TPS, Liberian DED, we have to understand there are many not eligible. And as I talked about, 11,000 Black migrants in the Los Angeles area who are undocumented. They are not eligible for such things. And how do we demand dignity and respect for those individuals? The temporary policies are an opportunity to demand permanent change. The community is already vocal and asking for change. We cannot sit idle. We cannot wait for another tragic situation as George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, or Breonna Taylor to make us create change. We have the powers right now. We are asking both local and national leaders to push for a society towards liberation. And Baji envisions a world where people are free and liberated from these oppression. It starts with you and I to make that world possible. Thank you.
Zach, I want to thank you very much for your comments. Please stick around if you can. So if members have questions, you'll be around to answer. Thank you very much. Next, we have Connie Chung Jo of the Asian American Advancing Justice. Connie, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm the CEO of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles. And I'm here to talk about the Asian Pacific Islander community, or the API community. There are more than 1 million API immigrants who arrive in the U.S. each year. And Asians are now the largest immigrant group entering the United States. We are also the fastest growing racial group in the United States. Asians are projected to become the largest immigrant group here in the United States by 2055. So Pew Research Center estimates that by 2065, those who identify as Asians will make up 38% of all immigrants, compared to 31% for Hispanics, 20% for whites, and 9% for Blacks. So Asian Pacific Islanders are growing as an immigrant population in fast numbers. Unfortunately, we've been largely ignored in the national immigration debate. And we need to see comprehensive immigration reform with a path towards citizenship that addresses our cultural needs. Immigration reform, we can't really talk about that right now under the COVID environment without talking about xenophobia and what's been happening in this country under the pandemic. Since COVID-19, there have been over 3,000 reported hate incidents targeting Asian Americans. Our community faces higher rates of COVID-19 hospitalization and deaths, especially when you look at the Pacific Islander community. You have seen that it's one of the hardest hit racial groups by COVID-19. Many of our community members are keeping our country running because we are frontline essential workers. But at the same time, we have been targeted by hate and discrimination at unprecedented levels that were perpetuated by the previous administration's use of terms like China virus, Wuhan virus, the Kung flu. We were very happy to see President Biden's executive order last week, in which he created a process for accountability and reckoning and scrubbing of this xenophobic and discriminatory language from the administration. So in order to eliminate the xenophobia, which goes hand in hand with immigration, is to remove racist and xenophobic language from all government documents, prioritize language access, prioritize cultural competency and sensitivity for best practices, disaggregate data by ethnic group, because you need to understand the diversity of our community and in order to understand the disparities that our community experiences. Support small businesses owned and operated by Asian Americans, provide PPE and benefits for essential workers and undocumented populations, and fund rapid response networks operated by community-based organizations entrusted by the community for victims of hate violence. So when we talk about API community and immigration policy changes that are needed, one is we need to reform laws to support family unity. We need to reduce the immigration application backlogs. There is almost a 20-year backlog right now for people from the Philippines who are with married sons or daughters or siblings of U.S. citizens. We need to consider installment plans for immigration filing fees and reduce the application fees for adjustment of status of citizenship and expand fee waivers. At Advancing Justice LA, we run a citizenship program, and with our citizenship applications, 70% of our total applicants receive a fee waiver or reduced application because they fall below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. For the Cambodian clients, it's 93% who are below 200%. 79% of our Chinese clients, 90% of our Thai clients, and 82% of our Filipino clients qualify for fee waiver or reduced fees. And I point this out because I want to dispel the model minority myth, which says that all Asian Americans are financially successful and we're doing well, and therefore we don't need support. And I want to point this out because we need to break the legacy and this tool of white supremacy that plays Asian Americans against Black and Brown communities and creates a wedge between us and other communities of color. And we need to stop allowing for that to happen. We need to include Asian Pacific Islanders in the ongoing immigration discussion, and we need to have policies that allow for language access. That is one of the most critical issues for our community. When you look at APIs in LA, who are more than 40 API ethnic groups represented that speak more than 30 API languages. It is an incredibly diverse community that needs language access in order to be served. So you need to host more ethnic media roundtables with community-based organizations, provide in-language immigration documents to reach the multiple API communities that are here, that are most heavily immigrant or foreign-born, and we need interpreters for API languages for immigration interviews. There's a gap. There's evidence shows that there's a gap between potential DACA eligibility and DACA applications in the API community. So in 2016, only 20% of potential eligible APIs sought temporary protection through DACA, compared to over 70% in the Latinx communities. So in our community, we're seeing that cultural stigma, limited media coverage, and language barriers contribute to our communities not accessing their full level of immigration relief to which they're entitled.
Lonnie, we're almost there. We're going to have to move on quickly, okay?
Sure.
Wind down, okay.
I'll just finish by saying again, I just want to underscore that it is the economic relief, the language access in multiple languages that we need, and public awareness campaigns, and that we at Advancing Justice LA want to work in solidarity with our Black and Brown communities. It was the reason why I came to Advancing Justice LA in August, when I saw the COVID discrimination coupled with the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, that really made me realize that this is a time this is a moment in history we have for our API community to be working more closely with our Black and Brown colleagues in order to address systemic racism and anti-Blackness in our society that goes hand in hand with xenophobia and immigration. So I'll just finish with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Connie. Thank you much for your very powerful remarks. And please, if you can, stick around when we go to a Q&A session. That would be fantastic. Next, we have Cristian Ramirez, who is the State Policy Director for SEIU USWW. Cristian, bienvenido. Por favor, adelante.
Thank you very much, Chair De Leon and members of the City Council. It's really a pleasure for us to be here in this important conversation. As folks know, SEIU USWW represents 47,000 immigrant workers and workers of color throughout the state of California. Most of our members are essential workers, and they've been braving this pandemic from day one. Many of them have fallen ill. Sadly, far too many of our members have perished as a result of this terrible disease. Working at LAX or cleaning luxury buildings in LA. And this issue is particularly important to us because many of our members currently are tepecianos or tepecianas. They have TPS status. Many of our members are from all corners of the world, although USWW perhaps is best known for Justice for Ghana's campaign. What a lot of folks don't know is that we have members from the Horn of Africa, from Eastern Europe, from the Middle East, from virtually every single Latin American and Caribbean nation in this hemisphere, and folks from Asian nations as well. So this issue is not only important, but is dear and near to our organization and to our members, particularly in a time like now in which our members are braving this pandemic. And for that important reason, we've been in touch with our congressional delegation and with the Biden-Harris administration to ensure that any immigration relief effort includes essential workers and their families. It is time that we acknowledge the fact that this nation has not only been built by immigrants, but during this pandemic, what's kept this nation moving has been the hard work of essential workers. Many of them people of color, many of them immigrants. And for that reason, we have been working. We worked, in fact, with the congressional delegation and with the Hispanic Caucus, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, to have members of Congress issue a letter to Speaker Pelosi to ensure that essential workers and their families, TPS holders and DACA holders, are able to benefit from the much urgently needed immigration reform. And as the chair pointed out in his remarks, the last time we had immigration reform in this nation was in 1986. And on a personal note, it was as a result of that bill that I was able to adjust my status. My family was able to adjust my status, even though I've been part of my family is a fifth generation borderlander family. We lived on both sides of the border, but I happened to just be born 5 miles south of San Diego, and because of that, I was not able to adjust my status until after Ronald Reagan signed that bill. So that was decades ago. So today, what we need to do, and I think my friend and colleague Angelica really underscored this point, that it's time for LA to lead, and it's time for California to lead. For far too long, we've been relegated as rebel rousers or I don't know what. But now we know that if the tremendous leadership in this council is able to speak with a loud voice, a unified voice, that we will have the kind of leadership in the House and in the Senate to ensure that we pass immigration reform. And today is the day in which we give all essential workers an opportunity to live with dignity and with respect in our country, to be able to continue to work and live the full experience of living in the United States without the fear of deportation or of detention. And finally, Chair and members of the council and fellow colleagues, what I would say is that we have a moral obligation. We've seen the recordings, the audio recordings, and we read the testimonies of children and of women and of men who are held in these concentration camps that have been established by our own government in our own lifetime, under our watch. And we have a moral obligation to free every single one of those poor souls who have languished in those detention centers for far too long, particularly in this time of this pandemic. It is the right thing to do. We have a moral obligation to undo so much damage in our communities, and we have an opportunity today to not just pass immigration reform, but to make sure that we do it in a humane way that prioritizes the human spirit and human dignity over misguided and expensive enforcement mechanisms that have sowed so much hate and so much sadness and frustration in so many separated families. And the last thing I'll say before I conclude, Mr. Chair, is that that also protecting asylum is critical. Many of our members came to this country fleeing civil wars, fleeing natural disasters, and it is shameful to see that just south of our nation's southern border, there are many folks from Haiti, from Central America, from virtually every single corner of the world waiting to enter the United States. It is a shameful, reprehensible policy that we have that the previous administration implemented. And today we have an opportunity to not just ensure that all essential workers are fully legalized in this country, to ensure that we put an end to the deportation machine, but also to ensure that we protect something that's so sacred to our nation, which is the right to asylum. And many of our members will not be alive today if during the civil wars that destroyed Central American nations, they would have the same kind of policies that we have in place right now. So we have an opportunity to change all those things. And I know with this leadership on this council, we will make it happen, because we now and forever, California and LA will speak with one voice that we are here to stay, and we are here to make sure that all of our families are afforded the right to live with dignity and respect. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I believe that you may be muted.
Thank you much, Madam Clerk, for that reminder. Cristian, muchas gracias, ¿no?, por sus comentarios tan poderosos. Thank you again for your leadership at USWW. Now, colleagues, we have 3 more speakers. And to the speakers, I want to make sure we keep it tight, because what I want to do is I want to allow opportunity for all of you to engage with my colleagues on the committee, because I think mixing it up during the Q&A is most important. So we're going to try our very best to keep to our time frame. But we have a few more speakers, and that's no other than the Reverend Alexia Salvatierra, who's with us, who's been a long activist with us with the Fuller Theological Seminary and Matthew 25. Reverend Salvatierra, bienvenida.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am the madrina, is what they call me, the godmother of Matthew 25, Mateo 25. And that's because I've been working on involving faith communities in immigration now for over 40 years. So we are blessed in Los Angeles with a very robust and diverse engagement of faith communities in this issue. Let me just describe it quickly. We have 2 large interfaith networks, Faith in Action and CLUE. We have the Archdiocese under Isaac Cuevas's committee. We have every major denomination. We have Muslim and Jewish organizations. We have Matthew 25, Mateo 25, which is a network of primarily evangelical churches, immigrant churches, non-immigrant churches, and what we call puentes, who are bilingual, bicultural millennials. We also have immigrant-led religious networks like We Care, which is mostly Nicaraguan immigrants. And we have ethnic community religious networks like FACE, which are Korean churches. So we are all engaged in the issue. We all work together. We work on different levels and in different ways. Part of what Matthew 25 leads is ACOS, which is the Ecumenical Collaboration for Asylum Seekers, which is 4 mainline denominations plus the evangelical networks. So what's new? What's on the horizon? We've all been doing this work for a long time. Well, the evangelical immigrant communities, both Hispanic and Asian, are slowly but surely getting more and more involved in this issue. And that's really good news, because we are bridge communities. At Centro Latino at Fuller, we have now trained over the last year about 60 Hispanic pastors to engage, and these are Pentecostal evangelical pastors, to engage their congregations in this issue on multiple levels. So I think the real question, we support everything that our colleagues just called for. We're not bringing something new in terms of policy demands. But what we do want to say is use us. That there are really multiple ways that we can be helpful, not only in invocation here and there, that we can speak in a very powerful way to legislators of faith. And we have been known to get Orange County Republicans to sign on to things that they never signed on to before. So, use us as bridge builders, whatever that looks like. We're also chaplains on the battlefield. We are all tired and hurting, especially under COVID, but we have been doing this, my siblings, my family, familia, for a long time. And so we want to be there to support the people who are in the trenches, and that includes all of you. And we also not only do advocacy, but we also do accompaniment. So, for example, ECAS has support circles all over Los Angeles that walk with families seeking asylum and unaccompanied migrants. So we do this work in the trenches on the ground as well. And lastly, we're just large numbers. In the white community, young people are walking away from faith in enormous numbers, but not in communities of color. Our young people may be ambivalent, but they're with us. So it's not going away. So, use us in all the ways that we can be used. And I'm really pleased at this gathering because I think we need to be strategic at this moment. What is the unique role that LA can play in this new opportunity? And I really would like to see us do more than just a hearing. I'd like us to do summits. I'd like us to really think strategically about what we can do that no one else can do. So thank you.
No, thank you, Reverend Salvatierra, and I think you're absolutely right, and hence the purpose of coming together during this hearing and getting the great ideas. And I think to the point that Angelica had made earlier, this is home. We're home to the largest number of undocumented immigrants, probably the largest concentration of congressional members. So they have to flex and exercise that muscle. They can't be passive. They can't be on the sidelines. They got to be on the front lines, and they got to be not assertive. They have to be aggressive. And making sure we get this, make this a reality. So I thank you very much. Next speaker we have is no other than Juan Jose Gutierrez, a man who's been in the trenches for decades, starting with Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, former executive director of One Stop Immigration and Education Center, right in the corner of Esperanza and Whittier Boulevard, right in Ball Heights. Mr. Juan Jose Gutierrez. Juan Jose, please take it away. You want to unmute yourself first before we move forward? And we can hear you if you unmute. There we go. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Kevin De Leon. I'd like to thank you on your leadership and that by all the other members of the City Council, Council Member Gil Cedillo, Corinne Price, Mitchell Farrell, and our newest member, Jessie Romero. And of course, all the participants today. I think all the speakers have spoken very well and have made it clear that this is the time for bold action. So I'm going to simply state a few ideas of what I think our city's government needs to stress both to the California and the LA congressional delegation so that they can pass that on to the congressional leadership as well as to President Joseph Biden and our newest Vice President Kamala Harris. Number one, I think it goes without saying that we need to support firmly and with conviction President Joseph Biden's immigration reform package. This is the first time in the history that I can remember where we have a president of the United States who's given full support to comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship. I think that we can tweak with that. We should be proud, that this has happened, and we must do anything and everything that we can to be supportive of the bold action that the president has taken, not on the 97th day of the 100 days that he said during which he was going to send the package of immigration reform to the Congress of the United States, but on the very, very first day. Secondly, I think that you should ask the president to make sure that we do away with the recently, incorporated into the immigration process of the public charge requirement. It is very onerous and unnecessary. It didn't used to be there before February 24th of this year. Federal courts have already held that the public charge is not fair and not to be there, but no formal action has yet been taken by USCIS I think that we need to have that done right away, and the city ought to go on record supporting that. Number three, I think that we need to make sure that there is an explicit statement on whatever legislation ultimately moves forward in the Congress and to the desk of President Joseph Biden, to make sure that persons who have no criminal record and who have been previously deported, that they shall be able to gain, TPS, permanent legal residency, and of course, eventually, U.S. citizenship. That segment of the undocumented population is pretty robust, and we have to make sure that that's clearly specified in whatever legislation is ultimately approved, so that those individuals have no problem becoming legalized. And then, fourthly and lastly, I think that individuals who had the unfortunate situation where they were arrested and were deported and are now residing abroad, but they have loved ones, wives, children, etc. They have no criminal record. They ought to be able to come back to the States and legalize. Some of these individuals resided in the States for decades and are now, unfortunately, just like the kids that were caged previously, whose parents were deported and they have not been able to be reunited. We need to have these adults who are now deported, no criminal record. They ought to be able, under the immigration reform package, to come back into the States and be reunited with their loved ones. And so those are my recommendations that that you hopefully will take into account. And of course, I'd like to congratulate you on this effort. For one thing, the only thing that's going to get legislation through is that we have this multiracial, multinational coalition of progressives across the United States, and we're a clear example of that. I really love to see. I really love it that I see reflected in this conversation, the mosaic of what's going to get us to the finish line on immigration reform. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's an honor.
Thank you much. We have Raquel, who is the president of the Pre-Health Dreamers at Cal State Los Angeles. Raquel, I saw you just a few moments ago. Hopefully we'll get you back.
I'm here.
Okay, Raquel, welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for giving me the space to share my story. My name is Raquel Morales, and I was born in Puebla, Mexico. I arrived in the United States when I was 3 years old, and although I do not remember much of my country, I have learned about it through my mom's food, culture, and traditions. My story starts with my mom coming to the United States for a better life as a single mother with 4 children to protect and raise. My mom may not have known how to read or write, but she always prioritized my education. And I am fortunate to say this year I will complete my undergraduate studies at Chirla. But the journey to get here was not easy. I struggled for most of my high school years and did not know what to expect for my college career as an undocumented student. But now I serve as a student lead at the Dreamers Research Center and a member of undocumented organizations at CSULA that include Pre-Health Dreamers and Students United to Reach Goals in Education. Both organizations support and advocate for all undocumented students on their path towards a career in health and other fields. Regardless of immigration status, I consider myself privileged to have AB 540 and DACA throughout my college journey. As the youngest of 4, I saw how these opportunities have benefited me to be where I am today. Through DACA and state laws, I have been able to work and study, an opportunity my siblings could only dream of having, an opportunity that should be given to all 11 million undocumented folks in the United States. I have also partnered with outside organizations such as Chirla. Partnering with Chirla through the Dreamers Research Center at Chirla had a significant impact on me by allowing me to learn more about organizing and inspiring me to be involved in my community outside of Cal State LA. It allowed me to know the importance of using my voice to educate people such as the elections, and to understand that even if I could not vote, I could see the impact I could make even during a pandemic by calling low propensity voters and getting out the vote while also being civically engaged in spaces like this one. So I ask you, council members, what additional steps can the city take to ensure a pathway to citizenship for all 11 million? This hearing is a great first step, but we must always do more. I look forward to hearing your response and the recommendations that come out from this hearing. Thank you for having me today. I am excited to continue future engagements in our communities and instill a purpose for more voices to see the changes we can do collectively, because together we are stronger. Thank you.
Raquel, I just want to thank you very much. Your comments were so powerful, and just you leading and representing us, fills me with so much pride and so much joy. El moble poblano de tu mamá, I'm sure is absolutely delicious. Everything that your mom brings to you, that know tus raíces poblanas and tus raíces from Los Angeles y tus raíces from here in California, that you're a true American. So you make us so very proud. I want to thank you very much for testifying with us today. So what I want to do, colleagues, right now is I want to open up. I'm not going to ask questions. I had a whole series of questions right now, but I'd rather turn it over to my colleagues, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Cedillo, Mr. Farrell, Ms. Rahman, questions that you have of our expert group of panelists. Please, let's try to get as many questions as we can possible. And I would ask our respondents, our pristine speakers, is maybe we can be as succinct as possible to make sure our members get as many questions in as possible. I want to keep to our time frame, which is only in a couple of minutes, but maybe we can extend a tad bit more for those who want to get their questions. For members who need to jump off, because I know you have schedules going on, I understand completely, but let's do our very best right now. Colleagues.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair. We'll go to Mr. Vice Chair, and then we'll go to Mr. Cedillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank all the participants in today's just extraordinary session. Really appreciate Caprice and the city family's presence. I think it's significant, again, that you're here, that you are representing the city. Very proud of the panelists. You have all just been inspiring and encouraging, and I think really helped set the tone for what's possible. As one speaker said, what we can do. Special shout out to Chirla. Angelica, we know, we love in CD9. As a matter of fact, Chirla had an office at our district office for a while, so that we could more effectively provide services to the community. And we're pleased to continue to support that effort in a variety of ways, to inform, to inspire, to encourage, and to help folks become legal residents. And we know that that's the goal. That's certainly is a possibility. So we appreciate that. I appreciated very much the comments that Zach Mohammed made, representing the African diaspora. We need to be paying more attention to that diaspora. And you've got my word and my pledge, Zach, to work with you closer on that. As we make the efforts of all of our immigrant communities known, and they're suffering in the same sorts of ways. So we appreciate that. Appreciate your concern about language access. And you're right. If we're not communicating with folks, we can't help, and we can't proclaim the help. So we just got to do it better all the way around. Connie, Chung, appreciate your comments from the Asian American Justice Group. And I can tell you without any doubt or hesitation that the Black and Brown citizens that I represent in CD9 look forward to collaborating more cooperatively, more intently with the organization and the community that you represent. We are definitely all in this together. And of course, Christian, your comments from USWW, you represent essential workers. A great portion of those essential workers I know live right in CD9. and as you've suggested, it's just been terrible. The impact of this virus it's had on our community and on your members. In CD9, we probably lost 1,000 citizens. 1,000 folks have died. Those are families that have been impacted, individuals whose lives have just been totally uprooted. And we just got to do a better. We got to do a better job. So again, I look forward to collaborating, working closely with you. I think there's a unique role for the public sector and the unions, the private sectors. We have to be playing and be working together. I like the idea. Someone mentioned, what's kind of the next step. This is certainly a good start. But what's the next step? And I think certainly a summit is an exciting idea. I know we're going to be continuing to look at some potential legislation at the local level. LA has certainly been a leader, pioneer, and I hope we can continue that as we help set the tone and help lay a template, in fact, for the federal government. And so we look forward to working closely to making that happen. And ultimately, one thing that folks can do is to be aware of the issues, certainly write about the issues, but vote. And again, increasingly, I think we're recognizing the utility and the ability to use that. But we've got to get folks involved, informed, educated, and committed to working together. And so, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm just proud to be a part of this committee. No specific question, just wanted to reaffirm my commitment to the individuals and to the organizations that are represented here, that you have certainly my commitment to work with you hand in hand to bring about the kind of systemic change that's important, that's necessary, and that we all deserve in our city, our state, and in this country. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, I can say reaffirm you certainly did. So I thank you very much for your comments. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your investment of over $1 million, I think from your account specifically with regards to naturalization efforts in your district, which is, unprecedented. It's outstanding. So I'd be remiss if I didn't underscore your leadership. You stood tall, you stood strong, fighting for immigrants. I thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. To a man who needs no introduction because we'll be reading about him in all our high school and college books on the work he's done historically. I know I have followed him, or I cut my teeth politically when we met for the very first time, organizing immigrants. That's no other State Senator Gilcedillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me say a couple of things. First of all, thank you for your leadership. I'm excited at the prospects. I've been looking forward to this opportunity and this moment. All of us have. Mr. Price, thank you for your leadership. You stand out singularly as one of the few champions of the immigrant community from the African American community. You are really setting an example and a template for these movements to intersect and to move forward. So I thank you. Only a few comments. Let me start with one, a political comment. And Reverend, let me say that the importance of the evangelical movement and churches was very important in 2002. And all the efforts that we made subsequent, but it will be critical, most critical today. Our need to bring in Republican votes, our need to talk to all parts of the country, our need to talk to other parts of the spectrum of the body politic will have to be going through that portal, through the evangelical community. And it's key. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's the same here in Southern California. It's the same here in my district. It's the same here in my family. Trust me, I can tell you the importance of that. So I appreciate you noting that. Second is I want to note one of the things that was important, I think you mentioned, Mr. Chair, is this question of criminalization. There was a period of time and a series, I don't know who brought this up about the criminalization, but there were people who were deported because they didn't have a driver's license. They could not drive legally. there were questions for our efforts here in the city around the question of street vendors and what would happen when somebody was selling paletas at the park. Could that impact their legal status? And in fact, the answer was yes, that it could place them in jeopardy of deportation. And so there's going to be a need for a lot of scrubbing, a lot of deep diving in terms of what were the laws that were in place that were simply draconian, that were anti-immigrant, and were put in place simply to make the lives more difficult for the immigrant community. So we need to look at that. I noted that we didn't mention, but deserves to be mentioned, the California Dream Act that all of us worked on. I remember that morning conversation. Angelica, you called me one morning about the need for us to have a victory, something significant, because it's important to win, and we need to learn from those lessons. And so that should be added into those kind of state laws that was referenced, but actually was a product of an entire movement. And then finally, I want to note, thank Connie Chung, Joe, for bringing up the importance of the API community. The languages and language rights is so critical. Every notice that goes out from my office is in Tagalog, Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese, in addition to English, of course, and Spanish. And so it's critical. We have to speak to everyone in this community, and we have to speak in the languages that are so important to them, right? The languages that they speak. And so this is critical. This is critical for the labor movement. This is critical for the immigrant rights movement. And this is critical for the faith-based movement. People must be respected in the first instance of that, right? Is when they hear someone speaking to them in their language. Even if it's just a greeting, in so many instances, all of us know how to say hello and no and goodbye in so many languages. It's a sign of respect. And so that is critical for all of us. And I want us to pay attention to that. Mr. Chair, thank you again for your leadership. Thank you for convening us. And I look forward to the great things that we will do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cedillo, State Senator Cedillo, Councilmember Cedillo, and again, one of our great leaders. Colleagues, before we go to the next member, I want to make sure that we maintain a quorum because we do have one action item that we're going to vote on. We've got to maintain that quorum of a minimum of 3. If not, we'll carry it over to the next meeting, but hopefully we can maintain that quorum. So we're almost done. Ms. Rahman, if you'd like to ask a question.
Well, I had a little bit of a procedural question for you, Councilmember De Leon, which is I heard some local actions and I heard some responses on national issues. And I just wanted to clarify what you hope to put out from the work of this committee towards advancing some of the national goals. Like, is it a resolution? Is it a letter? I just wanted a clarification on that. As I, listen to everyone's incredible analysis of what are next steps. And
it'd be a resolution.
It would be a resolution that comes out of the committee.
That's it. Among many other things that will be coming out from this committee as a result of this hearing.
Got it. And I did want to flag that I am one of the members who has to leave in a few minutes because of additional issues. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And if you did need me available for a vote, just want to flag that for you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or commentaries right now, Ms. Rahman, from any of our speakers today?
No, just gratitude to everyone for sharing their remarks and excited to be working with all of you to advance, I think, a really incredible agenda for Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rahman. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank all of the really terrific presentations by all of these wonderful leaders who are in the trenches and understand the immigrant communities that make up Los Angeles better than anyone in more nuanced ways than we can possibly appreciate. And so I really appreciate you all making the time to present. Also, I don't know if Raquel is still listening, but Raquel, thank you so much for your testimony. coming from a young leader with showing such courage at such a young age, and already knowing exactly what your purpose is and what your mission is in life and what your responsibility is. Thank you for contributing to this conversation. I just want to say a couple of things. Like everyone else, I don't really have so many questions so much as we all have to kind of soak all this in. And as this is the first meeting, we will be working with all of you. And I eagerly look forward to that. Couple of things to just keep in mind. I know in the 13th district, over 100 different languages and dialects alone are spoken, many of them indigenous from Central America and Mexico. And so I always have a real soft spot in my heart for indigenous primary languages in the immigrant community because they have particular obstacles just in navigating life in Los Angeles, much less other parts of the country. And they're here for the same reasons everyone else is. And one organization that Mr. De Leon has mentioned frequently and that I work with also is it's a nonprofit and they do food distribution, Know Us Without You. They're a wonderful organization and they really take care of the back of the house restaurant workers who in many instances are undocumented and of indigenous heritage from other parts of the world. So that's just a particular concern. And I know that all of you are super aware of that and you probably have staff dedicated to this population. So I just want to let you all know how important this subset of undocumented immigrants is for me personally. And then the other thing I want to say is this has been implicit through this whole conversation. We have a new administration and we have such an opportunity with immigration reform. President Biden speaks about it forcefully, with passion. And this is one thing that we can all unite and get powered behind in the immediate. So I look forward to working with all of you on whatever resolution, setting up panels, helping the Biden administration accomplish this immigration reform, whatever steps that we need to take as an outsized influence at the local level on this immigration reform. It's been said at this meeting today, we probably have about 1.5 years to get some really terrific fundamental things done. This is certainly one of them. So I look forward to working with all of you on this issue and then, of course, many others. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Farrell, I want to thank you very much for your comments. Let's conclude this session here today, but I want to give a very special thank you once again to Angelica Salceda, to Connie Changjo, to Zach Mohammed, to Christian Ramirez, to our Reverend Alexia Salvatierra, to Juan Jose Gutierrez, to Raquel Morales for your wonderful, wonderful presentations today. This is the very beginning. Know that things are going to move very rapidly. We'll have many online conversations, but we'll be coming together again. And what I want to do is I want to move to instruct the Chief Legislative Analyst, the CLA, to prepare a resolution in support of federal immigration reform, including any federal bills that are introduced and any input that we be able to provide during this hearing. I've been instructed that we don't need a second, so therefore we won't need a vote on this measure. But finally, let me just say this, is to my colleagues, Vice Chair Curran Price, to Senator Gil Cedillo, to Council Member Mitchell Farrell, and Councilwoman Nithya Raman. I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedules and having your voices, your thoughts heard here today. Again, a very heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you, of our panelists. We know that comprehensive immigration reform must happen. within the next 2 years. We cannot lose this opportunity at all whatsoever. And reform doesn't merely mean, just undoing Trump's draconian, pernicious, mean-spirited policies and executive orders. What it means is moving proactively forward, not being on the defensive, but being on the offensive, so we can realize the American dream for so many of our constituents who have given so much and are an economic pillar, a cultural pillar, to our gastronomical pillar to our community in Los Angeles, again, being the home of the largest undocumented immigrant population in the United States of America. So to each and every one of you, this includes our meeting. Madam Clerk, I want to just confirm with you once again if there's anything, if the desk is clear.
The desk is clear, sir. Thank you.
So with that, I don't have a gavel here, so I'll sort of kind of symbolically do it for each and every one of you. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good job. Bye now. We'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a Johnny.